My brother refused to share our $1.3 million home on my birthday. My deed revenge exposed true ownership. Dad's 65th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration, but I should have known better. Nothing in my family ever went the way it was supposed to, especially when my brother Marcus was involved. The dining room was decorated with balloons and streamers. The table was set with Mom's good china, and everyone was gathered around pretending we were a normal, happy family. But we weren't normal, and we definitely weren't happy. "So, Dad," Marcus said, raising his wine glass with a theatrical flourish, "I have some exciting news to share on your special day." Everyone turned to look at him expectantly. Marcus had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. At 35, he was a successful real estate developer with his own company, a beautiful wife named Jennifer, and 2 kids that my parents absolutely adored. I, on the other hand, was the family disappointment at 32. "Jennifer and I have been talking," Marcus continued, shooting a meaningful look at his wife, who smiled and nodded encouragingly. "We think it's time for some big changes around here." Dad leaned forward, interested. "What kind of changes, son?" "Well," Marcus said, pausing dramatically, "we've been looking at houses in the suburbs. You know, better schools for the kids, more space, a real family neighborhood." "That sounds wonderful," Mom said, beaming at her favorite child. "But what does that have to do with us?" Marcus grinned. "We want you and Dad to come live with us. We're thinking about buying a big house with an in-law suite, maybe something with a pool for the grandkids." The room erupted in excited chatter. My Aunt Carol started talking about how wonderful it would be for the family to be closer together. My Uncle Jim nodded approvingly about smart financial planning, and my cousin Beth immediately started asking about the pool. "But wait," Dad said, looking confused. "What about this house? We've lived here for 30 years. "That's the best part," Marcus said, his grin getting wider. "We sell this place and use the money toward the new house. The market's hot right now, and this neighborhood is really up and coming. We could probably get $800,000, maybe more." I felt my stomach drop. This was the house I'd grown up in, the house where I'd had my first kiss on the front porch, where I'd graduated high school, where I'd spent countless hours helping Dad with repairs and renovations. More importantly, it was the house where I currently lived after my divorce 2 years ago. I'd moved back in with my parents while I got back on my feet. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I could save up enough money for a place of my own. But with the cost of living in the city and Dad's recent health issues, I'd ended up staying to help take care of him. "That's a wonderful idea," Dad said slowly. "But what about Alex? This is her home, too." All eyes turned to me. I could feel the weight of their stares, the expectation that I would just go along with whatever Marcus had planned. But Marcus wasn't done yet. "Pack your bags, loser," he announced with a cruel smile. "This house is going up for sale." The room went silent for a moment, and then everyone started cheering and raising their glasses like Marcus had just announced he'd won the lottery. "To new beginnings," Jennifer called out. "To family," Aunt Carol added. "To getting a fresh start," Uncle Jim chimed in. I sat there in shock, watching my family celebrate my homelessness like it was the best news they'd heard all year. Not one person asked where I was supposed to go, or if I had the money for a security deposit, or if maybe they should have discussed this with me before making the announcement at Dad's birthday party. "Now Alex can finally learn to stand on her own 2 feet, Mom said approvingly. "It's about time she stopped depending on us for everything." "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "She's 32 years old. Most people her age have their own houses, their own families, their own lives. It's embarrassing having her live here like some kind of teenager." The words stung, but what hurt more was watching my parents nod in agreement. Dad, who I'd been taking care of since his heart attack 6 months ago, just sat there and let Marcus talk about me like I was some kind of burden. "I think this will be good for everyone," Jennifer added with fake sympathy. "Alex needs to learn independence, and you two need your freedom back." "When were you thinking of putting the house on the market?" Aunt Carol asked excitedly. "As soon as possible," Marcus replied. "I already talked to a realtor friend of mine. She said we could have it listed by the end of the week if we move fast." "The end of the week?" I finally found my voice. "You're giving me less than a week to find a new place to live?" Marcus shrugged. "That's plenty of time. There are lots of apartments available if you're not picky, and it's not like you have a lot of stuff to move." Mom added helpfully, "Most of what's in your room is just old junk anyway." I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to be my family. who were supposed to care about me, and all I saw were strangers celebrating my misfortune. Even my cousins who I'd grown up with were nodding along like this was perfectly reasonable. "I need some air," I said, standing up from the table. "Don't be dramatic," Marcus called after me. "This is good news. You should be thanking us for forcing you to finally grow up." I walked outside onto the front porch, the same porch where I'd spent countless summer evenings with Dad, where we talked about life and dreams and all the things I wanted to accomplish. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was being kicked out of the house I'd been helping to maintain and improve for the past 2 years. While my family continued their celebration inside, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for, James Morrison, senior partner at Morrison & Associates Real Estate Law. James had been my divorce attorney, and we'd stayed in touch afterward. He was a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who specialized in real estate transactions, property disputes, and family law. More importantly, he was someone who actually listened to me and treated me with respect. I dialed his number, hoping he'd answer even though it was a Saturday evening. "Alex?" James answered on the second ring. "Is everything okay?" "James, I need your help with something urgent," I said, keeping my voice low so the family inside couldn't hear me. "Can you pull up the property records for 1247 Maple Street? That's my parents' house." "Sure, give me a second," James said. I could hear him typing on his computer. "Okay, what am I looking for?" "I need to know who currently owns the property," I said. "And I need to know if there are any liens, mortgages, or other encumbrances on the title." "Interesting question," James said, his voice taking on the professional tone he used when he sensed there was more to a story. "According to the records, the property is owned by Clearwater Holdings, LLC. There's a significant mortgage on the property and— Wait, this is unusual." "What's unusual?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew what he was going to say. "There are some recent filings here. It looks like the original owners, Robert and Margaret Hamilton, defaulted on their mortgage payments about 18 months ago. The property went through foreclosure proceedings and Clearwater Holdings purchased it at auction. So my parents don't actually own the house anymore?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Not according to these records," James confirmed. "Clearwater Holdings has owned the property for about 14 months. But Alex, how did you know to ask about this?" I took a deep breath. "Because I'm Clearwater Holdings." The silence on the other end of the line lasted for several seconds. "You bought your parents' house?" James asked finally. "When Dad had his heart attack, I found out they were behind on mortgage payments," I explained. "Way behind. They were about to lose the house, but they were too proud to tell anyone. So I used my divorce settlement to buy the property at foreclosure auction, then let them continue living here without telling them." "Alex, that's incredibly generous," James said. "But why didn't you tell them?" "Because I knew they'd be humiliated," I said. "Dad's always been proud of being a homeowner, of providing for his family. I thought maybe I could help them get back on their feet financially and then eventually transfer the property back to them when they were in a better position. But now your brother wants to sell the house," James said, understanding the situation immediately. "He thinks he can just kick me out and sell a house he doesn't own," I said. "And my parents are going along with it because they don't know the truth." "What do you want me to do?" James asked. "I want you to prepare the paperwork showing that I own the property," I said. "And I want you to send a cease and desist letter to any realtor who tries to list it without my permission." "Consider it done," James said. "I'll have everything ready within the hour." "But Alex, you're going to have to tell them the truth eventually." "I know," I said. "I think tonight's as good a time as any." When I hung up the phone, I could hear the party continuing inside. Marcus was holding court, probably making more plans about the house sale and how they were going to spend the money. I sat on the porch steps for a few minutes, trying to prepare myself for what was about to happen. My phone buzzed with a text from James, "Documents ready. Sent cease and desist to 3 local realtors just in case. You own that house free and clear. Good luck." I walked back inside to find the family still gathered around the dining table, now discussing renovation plans for Marcus's dream house. "We could put in a wine cellar," Jennifer was saying excitedly. "And a home theater," Uncle Jim added. "Don't forget the pool house," Aunt Carol chimed in. Marcus looked up when I walked back in. "There she is. Did you get all your sulking out of your system?" "Actually," I said calmly, "I need to tell you all something important." "If you're going to beg us to let you stay, save your breath," Marcus said dismissively. "We've already made our decision." I'm not begging for anything, I said, pulling out my phone. I just got off the phone with my attorney. Mom rolled her eyes. Alex, you can't afford an attorney. Stop being dramatic. James Morrison from Morrison and Associates, I continued. He specializes in real estate law. Dad looked up with interest. Why were you talking to a real estate attorney? Because I wanted to make sure I understood the legal implications of what Marcus is proposing, I said. Specifically, I wanted to know what happens when someone tries to sell a house they don't own. Marcus laughed. What are you talking about? Mom and Dad own this house. No, I said quietly. They don't. The room went silent. Everyone was staring at me like I'd just announced I was an alien. That's ridiculous, Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Of course they own this house. They've lived here for 30 years. They lived here for 30 years, I corrected, but they haven't owned it for the past 14 months. Dad's face had gone pale. Alex, what are you talking about? I looked at my parents, these proud people who had struggled so hard to keep their financial problems secret. Dad, when you had your heart attack, I found out about the mortgage default. You were behind on payments for almost a year. That's impossible, Mom said, but her voice was shaking. You were 3 months away from foreclosure, I continued gently. The bank had already started proceedings. You were going to lose the house, but we worked it out, Dad said desperately. The bank agreed to a payment plan. No, Dad, I said softly. The house went to foreclosure auction. It was sold to pay off the mortgage debt. Marcus was looking back and forth between me and our parents, his confident smirk finally starting to fade. If the house was sold, then who owns it now? I took a deep breath. I do. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the room was staring at me like I'd just confessed to murder. That's impossible, Marcus said finally. You don't have that kind of money. My divorce settlement, I explained. When Tom and I split up, I got half of everything, the house, the investments, the business. It came to about $900,000. Jennifer's mouth fell open. You had $900,000 and you've been living here like you're broke? I used most of it to buy this house and pay off the remaining mortgage debt, I said. I wanted to make sure Mom and Dad had a place to live. But why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. Because I knew you'd be embarrassed, I said. And I hoped that maybe Dad's health would improve, that you'd be able to get back on your feet financially and I could eventually transfer the property back to you. Marcus was shaking his head in disbelief. So when I said we were going to sell the house, you were talking about selling my house, I finished, without my permission, but you let us think we still owned it, Dad said, his voice breaking. I didn't want you to feel like you'd lost everything, I said. I thought I was helping. The room erupted in chaos. Everyone started talking at once, voices raised in confusion, anger, and disbelief. This is insane, Marcus shouted. You can't just buy someone's house without telling them. She saved our home. Mom was crying now. We would have been homeless. But she lied to us for over a year, Aunt Carol added. She was trying to help. Uncle Jim argued through all the shouting. Dad just sat there staring at me. Finally, he raised his hand for quiet. Alex, he said slowly, are you telling me that when we were about to lose our home, you used your divorce settlement to save it? Yes, I said simply. And you've been letting us live here for free for over a year? Yes. And you never said anything because you didn't want us to feel bad about losing the house? Yes. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing, not a happy laugh, but the kind of bitter laugh you make when you realize how wrong you've been about everything. We've been treating you like a burden, he said, like some kind of freeloader who couldn't take care of herself. Robert, Mom said softly, we didn't know. We should have known, Dad interrupted. We should have paid attention. We should have asked questions instead of just assuming the worst. Marcus was still trying to process what had happened. So you're saying I can't sell the house? It's not your house to sell, I said. It's my house and I decide what happens to it. But what about our plans? Jennifer asked desperately. The new house, the in-law suite, the pool? You'll have to make other arrangements, I said calmly. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded. You can't just sabotage our family plans because you're jealous. I'm not sabotaging anything, I said. I'm protecting my investment. If you want to buy a bigger house, you'll have to do it with your own money. But we were counting on the sale of this house, Jennifer protested. You were counting on money that wasn't yours, I pointed out. The argument continued for another 20 minutes, with Marcus and Jennifer becoming increasingly desperate as they realized their dream house plan was falling apart. Finally, Marcus played his last card. "Fine," he said angrily. "If that's how you want to be, then we'll just cut you out of the family completely. Mom, Dad, you need to choose. Either she goes or we do." The room went quiet again. Mom and Dad looked at each other, then at Marcus, then at me. "You want us to choose?" Dad asked slowly. "Yes," Marcus said confidently. "Choose between your successful son who's trying to provide for this family or your failure daughter who's been lying to you for over a year." Dad stood up slowly, his face serious. For a moment, I thought he was going to side with Marcus. After all, Marcus had always been the favorite, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Instead, Dad walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "I choose the daughter who saved our home when we were too proud to ask for help," he said firmly. "I choose the daughter who spent her divorce settlement making sure we had a place to live. I choose the daughter who's been taking care of me since my heart attack, even though we've been treating her like she was the one who needed taking care of." Mom stood up and walked over to us. "I choose the daughter who put our family's needs before her own financial security," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I choose the daughter who's been living here, not because she needed our help, but because she was helping us." Marcus stared at them in shock. "You're choosing her over me?" "We're choosing the person who's actually been taking care of this family," Dad said. "While you've been making plans to profit from what you thought was our house, she's been making sure we still had a house to live in." "This is unbelievable," Marcus said, grabbing Jennifer's hand. "Come on, we're leaving." "Marcus, wait!" Mom called after him. "No," he said, turning back to face us. "If this is how you want it, then fine. Don't expect any help from us when you need it. And don't expect to see your grandchildren anymore." With that, he stormed out, Jennifer following behind him. Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim looked around awkwardly before making their excuses and leaving as well. Cousin Beth just shrugged and said she'd see us later. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty except for Mom, Dad, and me. We sat in the living room in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning." "No," Dad said firmly. "We're the ones who should be apologizing. We let Marcus convince us that you were the problem when you were actually the solution." "I can't believe we were so blind," Mom added. "All this time you've been taking care of us, and we've been treating you like you were a failure." "You're not failures," I said. "You hit a rough patch. Dad got sick, medical bills piled up, things got difficult. That happens to a lot of families. But instead of asking for help, we let our pride almost cost us everything," Dad said. "If you hadn't stepped in, we would have been homeless," Mom finished quietly. "So, what happens now?" Dad asked. "This is your house. Do you want us to move out?" I looked around the living room at the family photos on the mantel, at the furniture I'd grown up with, at the home that had shaped who I was. "This is our family home," I said. "I bought it to keep it in the family, and that's where I want it to stay. You're not going anywhere." "But Marcus," Mom started. "Marcus made his choice," I said. "He chose money and status over family. That's his decision to live with." "What if he comes back?" Dad asked. "What if he apologizes?" "Then we'll talk," I said. "But he's going to have to accept that this house isn't for sale and that I'm not going anywhere. If he wants to be part of this family, he needs to start treating all of us with respect." A few weeks later, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was different, smaller, less confident than usual. "Alex," he said, "I've been thinking about what happened at Dad's party." "And?" I asked. "I was wrong," he admitted. "I didn't know what you'd done for Mom and Dad. I didn't know you'd saved their house." "You also didn't bother to ask," I pointed out. "I know," he said quietly. I was so focused on my own plans that I didn't think about what anyone else needed." "Your plans involved selling a house that wasn't yours and making your sister homeless," I said, without even discussing it with her first. "I know," he repeated. "I was horrible. Jennifer and I have been talking, and we realized we were completely out of line." "So what's changed?" I asked. "We found another house," he said. "It's not as big as what we were planning, but it's nice. We can afford it without selling Mom and Dad's house." "Your house?" he corrected himself. "That's good to hear, Alex," Marcus said. "I was wondering if maybe we could try to fix this. I miss Mom and Dad. The kids miss their grandparents, and I I miss having a sister. I thought about it for a moment. Marcus had been cruel and selfish, but he was still my brother. And family is complicated. We can try, I said finally, but there are going to be some ground rules. Whatever you want, he said quickly. First, you apologize to Mom and Dad, not just for the house thing, but for the way you've been treating me. Done. Second, you stop treating me like I'm a failure or a burden. I'm a grown woman who makes her own decisions and takes care of herself. Absolutely. And third, you never, ever make plans involving other people's property without their permission again. Never, he promised. The family reconciliation wasn't immediate or easy. It took months of awkward dinners and careful conversations before things started to feel normal again. But eventually, Marcus and Jennifer moved into their new house, complete with the pool the kids had wanted. Mom and Dad got to keep living in the home they'd built their life in, and I got to keep my family, complicated as they were. The best part was watching Dad's health improve once the stress of potentially losing his home was gone. He started working in the garden again, fixing things around the house, and generally acting like himself for the first time since his heart attack. You know what the funny thing is? He said to me one evening as we sat on the front porch, the same porch where I'd made the phone call that changed everything. What's that? I asked. Marcus spent all that time calling you a loser and a failure, Dad said. But you're the one who turned out to be the most successful of all of us. How do you figure? Success isn't just about making money or having a fancy job, Dad said. It's about being there for the people you love when they need you most. It's about making sacrifices for your family without expecting anything in return. It's about doing the right thing, even when no one knows you're doing it. He was quiet for a moment, then added, By that measure, you're the most successful person I know. As I sat there on the porch of the house I'd saved, surrounded by the family I'd protected, I realized Dad was right. Success wasn't about the size of your house or the amount of money in your bank account. It was about the choices you made when things got difficult, the way you treated the people you loved, and the legacy you left behind. Marcus had learned that lesson too, eventually, and in the end, that made all the difference. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and the porch light casts that familiar golden glow across the yard, I sit with a cup of tea and let the whole evening replay in my mind. I still feel the knot in my stomach when Marcus raised his glass, the sting of Mom's words about old junk, the way my heart hammered as I dialed James's number with trembling fingers. But what lingers most isn't the anger or the shock. It's the quiet, fierce pride that bloomed the moment Dad placed his hand on my shoulder and chose me. For years, I carried the label they pinned on me. The divorced daughter, the one who needed help, the 32-year-old still sleeping in her childhood bedroom. I swallowed every sideways glance, every sigh that said I was a burden. Yet in that single act, buying the house at auction, paying off the debt, keeping the lights on without a word, I proved to myself who I really am. Not a failure, a protector, a daughter who loved so deeply she was willing to let her own story be misunderstood if it meant sparing the people she loved from shame. The sweetest part? Watching Mom laugh in the kitchen again, hearing Dad whistle while he weeds the garden, knowing the walls around us are safe because I made them safe. I didn't need a stage or a toast to feel seen. I felt it in Dad's quiet thank you the first morning he realized the mortgage statements had stopped coming, in Mom's hug that lasted a full minute longer than usual. Marcus's apology came wrapped in humility I never thought I'd witness, and forgiving him didn't erase the hurt. It just made room for something stronger, a family that finally talks instead of assumes, listens instead of labels. I still catch myself smiling at the irony. The loser saved the house, the marriage, the legacy. And every time I walk through the front door, I'm reminded that real wealth isn't measured in dollars or square footage. It's measured in the peace of knowing the people you love will never have to sleep anywhere but home.